Welcome to HIV The Morning After. I'm Dan Hall. I'm a documentary producer and director. I've spent my entire adult life watching ignorance and prejudice play out around HIV. And frankly, I'm tired of it. And I'm sure many of you are too. This podcast is an attempt to do something about that. By doing what I do best, interviewing people and letting them tell their own stories. I can make these episodes, but I can't make people listen to them or find them on their algorithms. That bit's down to you. Please rate, review, and share HIV The Morning After. Right then, let's get started. Today I'm speaking with Mark S. King. In 1980, Mark was 19 years old, impossibly cute, with a feathered strawberry blonde fringe. And he won a car on the Price is Right TV show. In 1985, he tested positive for HIV in a clinic after hours, off the record, because a positive result meant he could get fired, evicted, or disowned. He's been writing about it ever since. In the 40 years between then and now, Mark has watched an entire generation die, nearly didn't make it through his own survival, and came out on the other side with what he calls his mission statement: joy as a big fuck you to HIV/AIDS. He is one of America's most decorated HIV journalists, the NLGJA's LGBTQ Journalist of the Year, and a GLAAD Award winner, inducted into their Hall of Fame in 2025. And he's just this month won a 4th award from the Association of LGBTQ+ Journalists. His memoir, My Fabulous Disease: Chronicles of a Gay Survivor, was published in 2024, and he lives in Atlanta with his husband, Michael. Mark, it is a genuine pleasure to welcome you to HIV The Morning After. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Dan. It's great to be here. I guess the longer you live, the longer your introduction gets, right?
Yeah. I'm sorry. Little did you know that the whole podcast was just my voice and you just had to find snippets of speaking.
And thank you. That's all the time we have.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark, for being a guest on the show. So then, before you were the HIV guy with the keyboard and before West Hollywood and before any of that, where did it all begin for you?
Well, let's see. I was raised in a large family. My dad was an officer in the Air Force. So I'm an Air Force brat, and we lived, all over the place. We moved every couple of years. But by the time I was about 8 years old, he retired in Louisiana, where he was last stationed. And so I kind of grew up in Louisiana. That's where I call home, where the rest of my family is.
Can you tell us what it was like growing up there for a young queer boy?
Oh, boy. Well, it was the Deep South. And it was the late 60s and early 70s when I was coming of age. And it was, I had to figure out the nature of my own desire and find in myself the ability to accept that and not freak out. And find role models. There were slim pickings in the Deep South, and yet I found community theater, and I would do the summer musicals or help build the sets or whatever, just so I could be kind of in the company of grown gay men who didn't hate themselves and seemed well adjusted, and I kind of leaned into them for kind of acceptance and support.
And those men are so important. I remember when I was a teenager, when I was kind of 15, 16, doing a youth program with the English National Opera. And as part of that, we worked with their pianists, their rehearsal pianists. And I remember this one guy, Alex, who must have been early 20s, just being like, I see you and it will be fine. But done in this really gentle, unspoken way. And it meant so much to me. Those early role models are so important to us, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Now, and I don't want to suggest that they were all that they were all gracious role models who were there only for my best interest. I exploited my own burgeoning sexuality throughout my teenage years because it was the only language I had. It was the only way I knew how to communicate. And while not all of them were receptive to my advances and became my friends anyway and tried to guide me maybe in safer directions, there's no doubt that I used sexuality as a language for validation and acceptance.
This was a very different America from the one we know now, wasn't it? And you've got Nixon as president, you're in, the Vietnam War is collapsing, and you are this emerging hot young twink.
As I grew into adulthood, of course, I understood that so much of gay life is transactional, and so much of it is based on our currency, meaning our youth or our looks or our bodies, and I figured that one out fairly young. I'm not exactly proud of that. That was just the journey I took, and it really took a lifetime to kind of sort out, and I think I'm still sorting it out, Dan. What my currency is. I mean, you said some very nice things about me in your introduction, and although those accomplishments are true, I like many people, am the first to doubt my self-worth. And at least with sex, and this was a recurring theme throughout my life, at least with sex, it was kind of like, if I do this, I will get that.
But do you think maybe you're being unfair on yourself? Because isn't that how life works? Isn't that how we learn to live life?
Well, sure. We have to compare and contrast throughout our lives. How did that feel? How did that make me feel? Did it work for me? Or should I try something else?
And so how did you get involved then in the TV show The Price is Right? Because at 19, getting on mainstream television is quite a social entry.
It was just a game show that was very popular, and it still is. It's been going on for decades. And Bob Barker was the host, and people would come down and bid on products. And then the whole point of the show was you were bidding on the value or the sales price of different products, and through various games, and then hopefully you win a washer dryer or whatever the prize of the day was. And when I was 19 years old, my boyfriend and I at the time visited Los Angeles, and there was a line to get in to watch the show, and so I stood in line with everybody else, and there was a producer walking the line and talking to people who were waiting to get in and taking notes. And as soon as he got up to me, I said, "Hi there, I'm Mark King, and I came all the way from New Orleans, Louisiana, just to be on this show.
And look at my Farrah Fawcett curls."
Yes. Yes, my long strawberry blonde locks were waving in the wind.
New Price is Right, show number 101-10011D, Air TBA.
And sure enough, I was one of the first 4 contestants called down to the bidding stations, and then won the first prize and got up on stage with Bob Barker.
Now, Mark, you are a fine-looking young feller. What do you do?
I'm a student at the University of New Orleans.
Oh, you are?
Yes, sir.
Any student would love the prize.
The long and the short of it was 5 minutes later, I had won a car.
Do you have a girlfriend back there at the University of New Orleans?
Several.
Do you? Yeah. You'd have several more if you get hold of this. Now, here are
My boyfriend was in the audience wearing a matching outfit because we were in that early wearing matching outfit stage of our relationship, and he was, Charlie, gosh, he was such a handsome Texan with his big porn star mustache.
I'm not sure that I have ever had a contestant in any better shape than you are right now.
I return to that. I write about it in my book, but I even when I do presentations and stuff, I will show that video. And I guess the reason I do is because it is a snapshot of this young man just before. I had my whole life ahead of me. I had this handsome boyfriend. Things were going great. I was going to move to Los Angeles and take the world by storm and live happily ever after. And, within a few short years, that all changed.
And when you did that taping of The Price is Right, there were no rumors, were there, at that time? There were no dark clouds or somebody knows somebody who isn't well, who's got this cancer. It was nothing, wasn't there? You were in a state of absence.
Yes, 1980. Retrospectively, years later, they might have located, in blood samples here or there that virus had already begun its march, but we didn't know. And it wasn't until 1981 that even the first reported cases showed up in a medical journal of 5 gay men with pneumonia. And so a report, by the way, I took zero interest in. It had nothing to do with me, I thought.
And that report that you talk about that was in the papers reminds me of when did we hear it? It must have been in December 2019 when we heard of some people getting sick who'd been to a market in China.
Oh, yes.
And it just reminded me of that sense of, even if I have seen it, that's something that happens far away and is so irrelevant to me, and I'm going to get back to watching soap operas.
Yes. And as that pandemic crept closer to our lives, it had real resonance and emotional, traumatic triggers for those of us who had been there before. And the feeling that something was creeping closer, something bad, something unimaginable. Before that happened, I didn't think past the next beer bust. I didn't think past beyond the next going to the gym and seeing who follows me out of the locker room. It was just that kind of existence that, I was also young. And so we're young and vapid, and that's the way we live our life,
But I do like how you talk about being young and vapid, not as a self-criticism, but just as a place where you were in your life. You battle against this idea that young people today should cow down in gratitude for everything that we've done and everything that we've lived through, when actually, no. What was the point of what we have done as activists? What is the point of what we do if young people can't walk through a room head held high and ignore us and fuck the people they want? Because that's kind of what it's about. It's not about them sort of bowing down to us and saying thank you.
And that's not why I did it. I didn't do it so that I would come out the other side and people would grant me great reference. That's not why I did it.
So going back to West Hollywood of the early 80s, which I love how you describe, by the way, as analog cruisy, because this idea of a world without apps, because I've literally just gotten rid of mine about 2 or 3 months ago, and I'm rediscovering analog cruisy London, and it's so much better.
Oh, you're singing my song, The Good Old Days.
Literally last night I was at a bar, and when your horniness or your validation isn't satisfied by your phone, you get more confident in those spaces. And I was out last night and I was dancing and I was eyeing up hot guys across the room, and it was great.
Yes. And you might meet one of those people and you might have some sort of connection or dalliance, and you're going to come to them not knowing how they answered the 87 questions on the app or seen photos of their dick or something in their ass. You're not going to see any of that. It's all going to be discovered. And I think that what we miss, has probably been very well chronicled, is what we're missing here is the moment of discovery. And I don't just mean what he pulls out of his pants, although that's a lovely discovery too. It is about who they are and the smell of them and the chemistry of them, because we're swiping past people that we could have incredible chemistry if we would just allow ourselves to walk up to them across the bar. Or my favorite, Dan, living in West Hollywood and walking down a sidewalk and crossing paths with somebody, and your heart is racing and you're feeling tingly and you decide to turn around. And so it has he.
So then we're in early 80s, West Hollywood, and you, in 1982, have a remarkable encounter with Rock Hudson, who is the most heterosexual, the most hot Hollywood star at the time.
Yes, I did. And thank you for bringing it up. And I guess because you're in your 50s, you know who he is. Because as time passes, there is nothing more annoying than having a star fucking story when nobody knows who the star is. And so thank you for asking and for understanding Mr. Hudson and his career. Charlie and I, he of the Price is Right taping, and I had now been living in Los Angeles, and we were out for dinner at what was basically a gay bar restaurant called New York Company. And it was a nice place, you know, for gay restaurants generally suck. This one wasn't much better, but at least they had candles on the table and tablecloths, sort of thing. And seated a couple of tables away was Rock Hudson. I didn't see him first. He was behind me. Charlie saw him. And he's a Texan. He's like, oh my God, you're not going to believe this, Mark, but right behind you is Rock Hudson. And I immediately was jealous because Charlie was looking at him and not at me. And frustrated because Charlie had a perfect view and I didn't. And we were talking about it, and I'm telling Charlie, well, leave him alone. Stars should be left alone. Just leave him alone. And I suddenly hear a voice, and it says, you men having any fun? And I look around, and it is Rock Hudson, and he is talking to us.
Get out.
And I said, oh, yeah, we're having a nice time. It was Charlie and I's anniversary, the anniversary we met or something. You know, this is going back to, 1980, 81. And he invites us to his table to have dinner. And we get up and walk over to his table. And of course, I sit next to Rock Hudson because I would have broken Charlie's arm if he had taken that seat. And I sit down beside him, and we begin a conversation that goes on for the next hour or so. And the topic of Trivial Pursuit came up, the game, which was at that time new and all the rage, and everybody was playing it. And Rock says, I haven't played that. And Charlie says, well, you should play it sometime. And Rock says, I'd love to. And Charlie says, well, we have the game. Why don't we play it together sometime? And Rock says, sure. And Charlie says, how about tonight? And Rock says, sure. And I'm looking back and forth going, what? What is happening? Charlie drives Hudson's dinner companion home. I get in his Rolls and take him to our place, which was a crappy little walk-up apartment in West Los Angeles at the time. And we get up there. He asks for some scotch. I have a full bottle of scotch because we don't drink it. So Charlie gets home from taking the guy home. We get out the Trivial Pursuit. We actually play the game, and he wins. And at some point, Charlie excuses himself to go to bed. It is late. I'm not going anywhere. And so we have this perhaps unseemly scenario playing out. And I don't know, within a few minutes, I drunkenly opened the pants of Mr. Rock Hudson and then took it into the bedroom and woke up Charlie and had a three-way. Just for those who are deeply curious, yes, everything you've heard about the size of Rock Hudson's dick is absolutely true. It remains in the top 5 in my experience, and that's a lot of research. There was a moment where I guess I was sitting on him or something, and I looked down. I think I have gotten off, and he's looking up at me, and he says, "Are you done?" I just remember that kind of face in the dark asking me that question. And it showed a world weariness to the game, a game that I was only still discovering and playing for myself. The games we play, the hookups and the pandering and all of that game. And it was suddenly a game that he was tired. He was tired of. I told everybody I knew. First thing the next morning, I was on the phone all morning. And depending on who they were, I told them meeting Rock at the restaurant, or I might have told them inviting him home and we played Trivial Pursuit, or if you were a different kind of friend, I told you the whole story. I called my parents. The coda to all of that is that only a few years later, 3 years later, after that, he would become an image on the television set, on the nightly news, every night. Rock Hudson has AIDS. Rock Hudson is getting experimental treatment in Paris. Oh, here's a shot of him from a helicopter as we see him being wheeled in a gurney to the latest institute trying to fight this disease. And I had to watch him die on TV every night. I couldn't pass a magazine rack without seeing his picture on it. It was everywhere.
I remember the red top tabloid papers here screaming that Linda Evans had AIDS because she had kissing scenes with him in Dynasty.
Yes, I remember that well.
It was rabid, and it's hard to describe this press obsession with this story. It was ghastly. Even watching it as a 12-year-old, I found it repulsive. And he passed away in October 1985. But by this point, 7 months earlier, you had received your own diagnosis.
Yes.
What happened there?
I wanted to know, and it's funny because at the time, AIDS activists, and I did not by any means count myself as one at that point. I hadn't entered the fray at all. But what I heard is, don't take that test. Don't take it. There's nothing good that can possibly result from you taking the test. There are no medications. There's nothing that can be done for you. But what will happen is that you will be discriminated against and kicked out by your roommate and disowned by your family. Why would you do that to yourself? Don't take it. And I saw it like an envelope sitting in front of me, a sealed envelope. And inside was an answer as to whether or not I would be alive in 2 years. And would you open it? I would. I wanted to, so I did. I had a friend that worked in a doctor's office, and he saw me after hours because, God forbid, you do it on insurance. You don't want that on your record, So we did it secretly after hours. It was a blood test. It took 2 weeks for the result. And I remember very vividly him calling and saying, "I'm so sorry, but your test came back positive. And good luck," and hung up. That was it. And that's all there could be. There was no, "I will now refer you to a specialist," or "be sure to get on your meds." None of that. There was nothing. I realized, okay, if I'm going to be dead anyway, I'm going to do something. I gotta do something. I gotta help, whatever. And And I quit what I was doing at the time, and I went to work I got a job as a secretary at a local Los Angeles Shanti Foundation. It was an organization founded to help people die with dignity. All they did was train volunteers to be with the dying and hold their hand and not humor them or not try to tell them, you keep fighting or it's going to be okay. Just be a compassionate presence.
And there's that lovely expression, isn't there? You fix refrigerators, you don't fix people.
Yes.
That really struck me. Could you explain that to the listeners?
Yes. The founder of Los Angeles Shanti used to work with cancer patients. The families were all like, keep fighting, and or the friends were saying, you're going to make it, and he didn't see terminal illness as something to be won or lost. He believed that the best thing we could do is simply be an active listener and a compassionate presence to that person and meet them where they are, allow them to have the emotions they want to have, and don't try to fix them. For a kid who had basically devoted my life and free time to another gym workout and cruising the bars and what have you, to suddenly come to an organization and be working every day with volunteers who were helping people face mortality, while at the same time, that virus began killing my friends. It finally made its arrival into my social circle and did its worst. And I lost one after another.
I was really struck in some of your writing where you and it's not even close friends necessarily, just the bank teller has Kaposi's sarcoma on his neck and then he's not there on Friday and you never see them again.
It was terrible. It was a graveyard. It was a nightmare from which you could not wake up. And it happened everywhere. It was inescapable. I was living in West Hollywood, one of the epicenters of the epidemic, and largely gay. And as you say, the guy, checking you out at the counter, the guy that you've always chatted up who cashed your check at the bank, they're gone. They're gone. And you stop asking why. You know why. There were also times where you'd see someone at the grocery store and you hadn't seen, just an acquaintance, maybe somebody you don't know well, but you'd see them in the aisle and it had been 6 months. And you went, oh, they're alive. And you would hug, and that person would hug you right back because it was that recognition. And that was how life was. It was a constant movement from, I facilitated a support group, and then I would go to work, and another half dozen clients had died over the weekend, and then I would have to rush to the emergency room or to the intensive care where another friend was there, or planning the memorial to someone else who had died. It was one thing after. There was so much to do, to deal with, that when you're in the thick of that, it's hard to take in the totality of it. You just keep your head down and you keep walking. And for me, you played invisible and hoped against hope, because there was no evidence to suggest that I was getting out of this. Every memorial, every intensive care scene was just a preview of coming attractions. It was all right in front of me. And there was humor, often very dark, but there was humor and laughter and sex and kind of, it's funny, people still think of the 80s kind of maybe as a period of sexual austerity where we all just zipped it up, because But if that were true, of course, we would have stopped HIV in its tracks. It wasn't true. And many of us were trying to find the joy, trying to find the life force, and in many, sometimes that was fucking. Sometimes that was fucking in with great abandon, and as a way of just saying, I refuse to allow this to take away something from me. And I don't mean the politics of should we have a bathhouse or not. I'm talking about human to human. I will not let this keep me from my natural instinct to be close to another person.
You got into drug running.
Yeah, I think I was. I think that's exactly what I was. I think that I was a. What do you call those people that? Yes, a drug runner. You know, I snuck drugs into the country. Yes, I did. It was the early 80s. There were no medications. And I think by, the mid 80s or so, there was talk of AZT, I believe I know that was the first drug, but I think that was the drug in question. There was talk that might be something that worked. Of course, there were always rumors of something that might work, and I took them all. Shark cartilage, people putting crystals on my body, you name it, and I did it. And there was talk of this new drug, and AZT, and it was not available in the United States. It was not FDA approved, but you could get it in Tijuana. And Tijuana was a 2-hour drive or so from Los Angeles. And myself and Lesley and Ron and Marcos would get in the car and drive to Tijuana on a Friday. And as soon as we got to town, we split up and we went to all the pharmacias with some prescription, whether forged or not. Maybe we had a receptive doctor back in the U.S., but we went to every pharmacia and we bought it out of this drug. And we loaded it into the car and packed it under the spare tire in the trunk. We were not very, capable drug smugglers by any means. We could certainly have been caught. And I don't know what do you do? It's not heroin, it's AZT. Is that bad? I don't know. And then we would spend the weekend on the beach. We would rent a house and we would get stoned and would sit on the beach under fire and then Sunday drive back. And we would stop in San Diego, where there's a big gay dance club there, the West Coast Production Company at the time. And we would stop there because it was just in time for their Sunday tea dance, their afternoon dance party. And I have very specific memory of being on that dance floor with my arms around Ron and Lesley and Marcos. You know, when you're young and you're on the dance floor and your arms are all around each other and you're in like a group, like a huddle, and you're jumping up and down and you're dancing to Gloria. It's just such a specific memory of dancing to Laura Branigan and not caring about AIDS, not thinking about the drugs in the car. It was willful joy. Willful joy. And then of course they all died. All three of them. A friend explained to me at some point later, God is not in the drapes, Mark. If you're looking for some sort of miracle, it's a very real life miracle. It's in the here and now. It's the fact that Lesley had his closest friends around him and were holding his hand and singing him songs and making sure he was comfortable. I mean, what bigger miracle do you need than that? That was it. I believe in what I can see. I believe in what I can feel. And I felt the love of all of us for Lesley in that moment. And his death was, a good one. He at least had that, the others, weren't as lucky. Marcos woke up blind. He got CMV retinitis, and it struck him like in the night, like he woke up and he was blind. He tried to deal with that for a very short period of time and could not. And he put a bag over his head. And then the third, Ron, he was shipped back to family in Connecticut. And his mother could not deal with it, could not deal with his illness and incontinence, and put him in a nursing home.
And how old was he?
26 years old, and he died in a nursing home.
Okay. Now, your brother Richard, who you also call Dick, is also gay, and he lost his partner Emile during this time. Would you tell us about that?
I was there shortly after Emile died. He fought valiantly, and the visits with him became more seldom, and the calls from my brother became more seldom, because they had entered that period where it's down to the two of them. And it's so incredibly precious and intimate that you reduce who is invited in, and they also had an agreement that Emile would let my brother know when the day became the day that he would leave. And they had collected second alls in the house, and they had them ready to go. And Emile announced to Dick, he was frail at this point, and announced to Dick, today is that day. Dick opened up all the seconals and released the powder into this glass of brandy and swirled it. And Dick described this to me later. I came over after Emile had died that night, and no mention of this was made. It was months before my brother was able to tell me the exact circumstances of Emile's passing. And my brother told me that he mixed up that drink, and Emile wanted it. He reached for it. He wanted to take it. He wanted to drink it. And Dick it's not that Dick didn't want to honor his wishes. He just wanted another minute to say, I love you, Emile. And Dick wasn't able to stop him. Emile was ready. He took it. He gulped it down. And Dick tells me this, my brother, he says, Emile didn't believe in an afterlife or whatever. He believed that you pass away and things are done. And in the few moments they had before Emile fell asleep and then died, Dick said to him, I will miss you so much. And Emile said, I'm going to miss you too. It was an act of love. It was a love story from the first moment to the very last moment. It was as beautiful a passing as one could expect during a very tragic time. I always say, I know exactly what man I want to be, because my brother was that man first. Today, he lives with us. He retired and came to Atlanta and is taking a nap in his bedroom downstairs. And I love having him close to me.
And for people listening to this who are shocked or horrified by that story, I'm just going to quote a bit of your essay, which is available on your blog, Suicide, A Love Story, in which you write, suicide was, Suicide was a common feature of life for gay men in the 1980s, but rather than it being a result of bullying or despair with which it is often associated today, it was very often a gesture of empowerment for embattled AIDS patients wanting to die on their own terms, sometimes with the assistance of those who loved them the most. And I can't think of a better way to describe that.
Yes. Yes. And as with all of these other aspects of life we're talking about, what remains is love and nothing but good memories. Sitting on the nightstand downstairs next to my sleeping brother is a beautiful picture of Emile. And that love continues. It always will be there.
In 1996 comes and combination therapy arrives and everything is wonderful again. But actually it's more complex than that, because you write about how, in theory, suddenly this medication is available and you're not going to die. And you should be really relieved and you should be ecstatic and it should be, oh, wow, I saw it through to now and now all the problems are over. But that's not what happened to you.
I had a life ahead of me and I was prepared to live. And then they said, you're going to die. And then you work for years to come to terms with that, to emotionally prepare for that. And then they say, oh, wait, nope, sorry. Turns out you're going to live. And you go, what? Oh, I am? You mean, and then as so many people living with HIV during that period responded, you mean I quit my job and went on disability and ran up the credit cards and took a trip around the world and told my boss to go to hell, and now I'm going to live? Shit. Because I had emotionally prepared myself to die, and now I'm not, and I'm broke and haven't worked in 10 years, and what do I do now? And I know how ungrateful that sounds, and then you feel guilty for not feeling grateful. It is a mind fuck. It turns out that the person that you are ready to die with may not be the person you're ready to live with. For those of us fortunate enough to have medical care and access to those medications that saved our lives, we are talking about the United States here. We all didn't. Healthcare is not considered a human right, but for people like me, we were able to access them, and it changed suddenly the direction. For me, that meant continuing to do what I had been doing, which was being a voice for people living with HIV, and to come full circle, Dan, in terms of, I had once been trying my best to get on TV as an actor, right? And by this point, I was on TV as someone living with HIV. And I'm like, okay, I'll take it. It kills two birds. It's like I had this.
I'll take anything that gets me in the studio.
Right.
I'll do whatever it takes.
That's right. Show business. I mean, I am an actor and an extrovert, and don't mind admitting, crave the spotlight and get to be on podcasts like yours. But it's also true that I have strengths. And if one of those strengths is to be able to speak and write as a person living with HIV, and in doing so, I'm helping other people, I'm telling the story, I'm educating those who weren't there, and I'm helping people who were, then great. Then it's a win-win for everybody. And so here we are.
When I initially started this podcast, I thought, it's gonna be a really fantastic celebration of long-term survivors as these Marvel or DC comic superheroes who have survived. It was fascinating looking at your writings, where in a way that term, the long-term survivor, you kind of treat with some ambivalence, in that sense that it doesn't tell the whole story. What do you think it leaves out?
I think it leaves out our humanity. It makes us symbols of some sort. It makes me feel like a relic, something to be admired and examined, but that you're not going to get the whole story. You're going to see this symbol of me as this HIV survivor, and I'm to blame for that. It's my whole brand. I have I write as my fabulous disease. It is front and center. So I own my part in that. But for anyone who reads my writing ongoing, they know that I am very much involved and engaged in life in the here and now. I want to debate with you who's going to win the Oscar coming up, and I've seen them all, and what's going on Netflix, and my wonderful husband's obsession with new cars. And, that's where I live. And I don't even think about HIV in any practical way, period. I think about HIV in terms of my community and the communities left behind, and the work left to be done. And that is what interests me. Because HIV is just fascinating as a topic. It's fascinating because every single societal challenge, transphobia, racism, homophobia, the church, condoms, bodily fluids, fucking, it's all wrapped up into this little viral particle. And it makes us deeply uncomfortable. That's fascinating. We got what we came for. We as gay men, we got what we came for. We got the drugs and the support groups and the organizations and all of that. And then we left the playing field. And we left behind Black and brown people, trans women, people who could not fend for themselves. And we left them behind to fend for themselves.
Whole continents.
Yes, exactly. And that's shameful. And I want to be I want to make sure that this experience of having lived with HIV and gone through it, life is about addition and not subtraction. I want my mind to be opened. I want my heart to be opened to other people unlike myself.
And I've got to say, when we were talking earlier and we were talking about you being this kind of delightful twink coming into the space, when I've seen pictures of you now, I just kind of see these kind of huge shoulders. And I just think that doesn't look like a twink.
No. Well, thank God for, the ginger daddy fixation. Where were you 50 years ago when I was a redhead and nobody thought we were hot? Now, but you know what? I'll take what I can get. Make no mistake about it. I'm still a very much a victim, or at least bought lock, stock, and barrel into what gay culture believes to be of value. And if that means that with some working out and what I've learned over the years at the gym, I can keep my shoulders big and round and look great in a tank top, I'm going to do it, by God. And I accept, by the way, any and all people who want to slip into my DMs to tell me how great it looks, and then give me pictures to enjoy. Go ahead, by all means, because I'm not going to have many more trips on this merry-go-round. I'm 65. I'm gonna ride it till the wheels come off, as they say. But I do it with somebody that is very aware that there's a lot more to life. I'm going to just try to enjoy all these various aspects of it as best I can. I think what you're trying to say is that I have great arms. Isn't that where you were going with this?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Okay, great.
And I was trying to disguise it as intellect.
Yeah,
but,
no, please don't. Please don't. Be baked.
And I did wonder on this recording whether your ethos of joy being the most important thing, joy is this fuck you of HIV/AIDS. I wasn't sure whether that was just a sort of on-brand bravado. But speaking to you, and we are an hour 45 into this recording, it isn't bravado, is it? You really, really mean it.
I came this way. I was happy to begin with. And maybe some of it was a defense mechanism against things that scared me growing up and growing up gay and all that stuff. But I'm happy to be here. I'm thrilled to be here, and I enjoy. I'm feeling happy about it. I got a great sense of humor. I like to use it. This is absolutely who I am. Now, I'll be happy to lower my voice and turn on a thick Southern accent if that gets me somewhere. But that's not me. I'm really just kind of a silly guy.
And you put in some of your writing this lovely image of you with your husband Michael on the back porch, and this sense of, I love my life. Things are just right at this very moment. And I love that because there's this sense of, this is the skill above all that we need to learn. We need to learn where these pockets of happiness and comfort are, and recognize them when they're happening.
They are happening right now. I am very present to where I am in this very moment. I have got my earbuds in and a microphone in front of me, and I'm talking to you, and I couldn't be more content. And I can take that and soak it in and feel good. We're always looking for happiness ahead of us somewhere, or remembering some great thing that happened to us. Well, that's all good. Anticipation's great. Memory is great. I'm happy right here, right now. And I think that we get so caught up in these big questions about what it all means and what is out there in our universe and our lives, and trying to make sense of it. Nobody spent more time navel gazing than me. And I think it is reduced to sitting on the porch with my husband and my hand in his and looking at the yard and being happy at what I see and what I feel. That's it. Because there ain't going to be much more than that. There's going to be some highs. There's going to be some lows. If you're somewhere in between, that's a beautiful place to be.
Now then, we're coming towards the end of the recording now, Mark, and this is the point at which I like myself and also the people listening to this to pay respects to somebody whom you care about, who you've lost. Would you like to share who that is and why you've chosen them?
I choose Antron. Antron was a lovely, lovely young black man who traveled so heroically through life. He was gender fluid, outrageous, wore gold lame, and died of AIDS only a few years ago, reminding us that this crisis isn't over for a lot of people. Sometimes you get caught up in the system. Sometimes the system passes you by and you fall through the cracks. And that's what happened to him. Death from HIV is not something for the history books. It's still happening in the here and now. And so I remember Antron. Survivors like me, we're a little haunted. We're a little haunted by those memories and all of that. But like with most things with life, the bad kind of falls away and you're left with good things. You're left with the pride of what you did for your friends. You're left with knowing that you did your best. And we as a community have a lot to be proud of. I'm still here living a life, and I live very much in the present. And yet, yes, this very defining decade or 2 decades happened to me and changed me forever. And it didn't just happen to me. It happened to all of us. And our response to it was incredible. It was beautiful. It was heroic. It was all of those things at a time when nobody gave a shit. And every institution that we had counted on, that we thought might be there, we found out they weren't. We found out that we were the diseased pariahs. And I'll tell you, for a privileged white cis man like myself, a pretty boy, to suddenly realize that I was the guy, I was the one that was being, shamed and othered, and it was a pretty big shock. It was a real eye opener. Of course, through that process, I met trans women and black men and women who just all nodded their heads like, well, welcome to the fight. Now that you realize what it's truly like.
Now, normally this is the point at which I ask the guest to write their message on a postcard to the world and say to them, what would that be? But having asked you to think about that in our pre-interview notes, I'm actually going to throw that out the window. And I would like to know what the Mark sitting on that porch with his wonderful husband, Michael, in a place of peace and happiness, would say to that young strawberry blonde twink who's just arriving in West Hollywood.
Trust your instincts. It's going to be all right. This is a very scary ride. You're going to learn how to make it less scary for somebody else. And that is absolutely the greatest thing we can do in this life.
Mark S. King, essayist, writer, author, activist, all of the fantastic things. Thank you for the decades you have done of telling the truth and making joy and fucking and all of it look like the wonderfully radical act that it is. Thank you so much for coming onto the show.
You're so welcome. I appreciate you.
If you were moved or informed by what you heard today, please help spread the word. Subscribe to HIV The Morning After and leave a rating and a review. It makes a huge difference in helping others to find it. Your support helps to amplify these experiences. If you'd like to get in touch, you can email me at hivthemorningafter@gmail.com. And remember, if you encounter HIV stigma in a bar, call it out. If you encounter it at work, call it out. If you encounter it online, call it out. Because if you don't, you're part of the problem. The theme tune is by Pauline Nidu at unstoppablemonsters.com. And many thanks to Murray Lang for his continued support. And thank you for listening. Join me next time for another important conversation on HIV The Morning After. I've been Dan Hall.